What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. It is Monday, January 29th, 2024, and I have an emergency alert to share with you guys. Right now, it is 2:44 p.m. Eastern Time here in the United States, and we have some major breaking news coming in from the Middle East. So it looks more and more likely that the Biden administration is going to be launching a massive and severe retaliation against Iran for the death of 3 U.S. soldiers in Jordan after a drone attack by Iranian proxies. So I want to just update you with all the latest information that I have. And I want to mention that I will probably be going live tonight again, all night long, to cover this because I think that this could happen tonight, guys. Okay. We could see a massive, severe retaliation against Iran, not just the proxies in Iraq and Syria, not just a few warehouses and ammunition depots. I think they're going to go after Iran, guys. Okay. So make any last minute preparations now in case things spiral out of control. Make sure you have at least 2 weeks of water and food. Make sure you have a fallout shelter if things go nuclear. What you're looking at here is the flight path of a B 52 nuclear bomber over eastern Texas this afternoon. It took off from Barksdale Air Force Base. And last night we had half a dozen aerial refuelers go to the UK. And I don't know if this is because of what's going on with Iran or if this is because of the massive exercise that NATO is doing, 90,000 troops. Okay. But this is a very unusually high amount of aerial refuelers to be going overseas in the middle of the night. And yesterday, the Russian Ministry of Defense evacuated some of their forces from Syria, specifically one of the air bases where the Iranian proxies operate at and where Iran brings in weapons to Syria. This air base, I guess the Russians spend time there. So they've evacuated their forces from there because they're expecting the U.S. to hit it in this massive retaliation. So, U.S. officials have confirmed today that significant responses have been discussed between Biden and his national security team. Per U.S. officials, a large variety of options are being discussed, and they include hitting targets in Syria, hitting targets in Iraq, and hitting targets in Iran. My guess is they're probably going to hit all of those. And according to White House officials, the planning and preparations are still underway for response options against Iran backed groups in Iraq and Syria, as well as the IRGC in Iran, with the goal of retaliation expected to be a return to deterrence in the region, but that they will still be very consequential to these groups. Okay, so they want to basically return normalcy to the region, and that's going to take a very serious operation to do that. And apparently there's an all Senate briefing today on the crisis in the Middle East. So all senators on deck right now, having an emergency meeting, likely with the Biden administration, to discuss various options. And obviously, that's a red flag because if Biden wants to do anything big, he needs approval from the Senate and from the House. So, what they usually do is they do a private vote so it doesn't tip off the enemies. Okay. The U.S. failed to stop the ATT-ACK on the military outpost in Jordan when air defenses confused an enemy drone with a U.S. drone that was returning, according to U.S. officials. This was quoted by the Wall Street Journal. So the air defenses confused the enemy drone with a U.S. drone. And one of my subscribers wrote a comment to me this morning saying, I got a call this morning from a freight broker, asking if I was interested in moving military freight from railhead to various strategic locations in the lower 48. So this was a truck driver, very interesting. And the former commander of the U.S. Navy Fifth Fleet said, "We can hit regions inside Iran with advanced cruise missiles. We can hit oil and natural gas points off the coast of Iran." And today, the supreme leader of Iran, the Ayatollah Khamenei, held an emergency meeting with the leadership of the IRGC. And there was an emergency meeting last night for all the leaders of the IRGC. So the IRGC held an emergency meeting with all their top commanders last night. And Reuters is reporting that political pressure for Biden to hit Iran directly is increasing. And apparently, Iran is planning to expand naval operations into Antarctica and establish a missile control base there. And the Israelis launched an aerial bombardment in Damascus near the area of Saida Zainab, targeting the IRGC there. No information yet on who was eliminated, but this was this morning. Okay, the Israelis launched an aerial bombardment near Damascus targeting the IRGC. And Iranian militias have repositioned themselves on the line of Euphrates River from Al Bukamal all the way to the Al Mayadeen in Deir Azor countryside, in addition to repositioning in Palmyra City in the Syrian desert in fear of a U.S. response. So Iranian militias are already preparing for a U.S. response. And I reported last night on my live stream that Iran has put their military and their air defenses on maximum alert. And apparently 3 U.S. B-52s landed in Israel last night. They landed at the Ben Gurion airport in Tel Aviv. This was reported by Israeli media. So 3 B-52s, guys, okay? That is a huge red flag. Most likely they're going to be used for this operation against Iran, because the B-52s can carry the long-range cruise missiles, because Iran is a very large country. It's like the size of Alaska. And to hit targets inside of Iran, you need missiles that can travel a long distance. And the B-52s can carry the air-launched cruise missiles that have a nuclear payload on them, but they can also carry conventional cruise missiles without a nuclear payload, either one, but they have a very long range. And Iran's representative to the UN said Iran had nothing to do with the ATT-ACK on American forces in the region. So Iran is scared. They're denying that they had anything to do with it. Jordan has requested Patriot air defense systems from the U.S. And the IRGC Navy, that's the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, seized an Australian flagged tanker with up to 2 million liters of diesel in the northern Persian Gulf off the coast of Bushehr. This was last night, guys. Okay, so the Iranians seized an Australian tanker carrying 2 million liters of diesel. More than 300 Illinois National Guard soldiers and their families are preparing for deployment to the Middle East on Saturday for Operation Spartan Shield. What's interesting is this is the same operation that the brigade from Kansas is going to support. So very interesting. And that Operation Spartan Shield is in Saudi Arabia. So we're suddenly sending over a bunch of National Guard from Illinois, Kansas, and who knows where else to Saudi Arabia. That's definitely a red flag that, we're preparing for something. We're beefing up our forces in the Middle East. And Tom Cotton, the senator from Arkansas, is calling for a devastating military retaliation on Iran, along with Lindsey Graham, John Cornyn, and Roger Wicker. These are all prominent Republicans, and they're all calling for a direct and severe response on Iran. And there was fierce shelling in northern Israel this morning as Hezbollah launched heavy missiles at some barracks used by the Israeli military. And Israel responded shortly after with some of their own artillery or aerial bombardments. And Hamas reportedly rejected a recent ceasefire deal that was offered to them by Israel. And the Yemeni army fired several naval missiles at the U.S. Navy USS Lewis B. Puller, a purpose-built expeditionary mobile base vessel in the Gulf of Aden. Okay, so the Houthis launched missiles at another U.S. warship, guys. Okay, the USS Lewis B. Puller. This was yesterday. We don't know if it actually got hit or not, but if it did get hit and they're not telling us, that's screwed up. Okay, but it's just a matter of time before one of our warships or one of our allies' warships gets hit by the Houthis. So now we have multiple fronts to deal with. We have the Houthis launching missiles at our ships. We have Iran and their proxies. And then we also have Hezbollah, which is about to go to war with Israel. And this update was sponsored by My Patriot Supply. Guys, My Patriot Supply has brought back their 25% discount on their 3-month emergency food supply. And to get the deal, you have to go to preparewithnYprepper.com, and the link is in the description below this video. And this 3-month emergency food supply has a 25-year shelf life and includes over 2,000 calories per day. All of this food is stored within 6 rugged, water-resistant buckets, and free shipping is included. And My Patriot Supply is also doing a 30% discount on the Vesta self-powered indoor space heater and stove. With this thing, you can safely heat and cook indoors. You don't have to worry about carbon monoxide poisoning. You don't have to worry about burning your house down. It uses special canned heat, and it comes with 24 cans. Each can will last you 6 hours and can warm up a room of 200 square feet. So to get the deal, also go to preparewithnYprepper.com. And also, My Patriot Supply has a general store where they sell all kinds of prepping and survival items. To get to that store, you just click on the My Patriot Supply logo at the top of the page, and it'll take you to their general store. And they have all different kinds of discounts here on various items. They have MREs, they have water filters, they have potassium iodides, fire starters, anything you can imagine. So use the link preparewithnYprepper.com to get 25% off of the My Patriot Supply 3-month emergency food supply and 30% off of the Vesta indoor space heater and stove. So just total chaos in the Middle East right now. But this is very concerning that the Houthis may have hit one of our ships, okay? The USS Lewis B. Puller. And Denmark has announced that they're going to be sending a frigate to the Red Sea to support Operation Prosperity Guardian. And NATO should be prepared for the prospect of Russian missile strikes in Europe in the event of an all-out war with Russia, said Lieutenant General Alexander Solfrank, a commander of NATO's Military Logistics Center in Germany, in an interview with The Times published on January 28th. Solfrank said that NATO already has the capacity to defend and likely deter a potential Russian invasion, but given the current array of NATO forces across the continent and lack of preparation behind the eastern flank, NATO armies could be forced to make costly choices. Several NATO commanders and other alliance members have warned in increasingly stark terms in recent months about the dangers of such a war and what impact it would have across Europe. Lieutenant Admiral Rob Bauer, the chair of the NATO Military Committee, said earlier in January that NATO countries should be prepared for the possibility of an all-out war with Russia. Solfrank and other NATO generals cautioned that a direct military confrontation with Russia could occur as soon as within the next 3 years. In such a conflict, Germany likely would be targeted as the central turntable of NATO's logistics in Central Europe, they said. We have been very focused on the East, said Brigadier General Frank Schmitz. I think we also need capacity to the rear, all kinds of capacity. There are still some issues, such as problems with the interchangeability of NATO equipment and personnel that could hinder an appropriate response, Solfrank said. So, NATO generals are warning that war with Russia could happen within 3 years. And this one specific NATO general, he's responsible for logistics, is saying that Russia could launch missiles into Europe. Okay. And Finland's presidential election is set to go to a runoff next month as no candidate gained a majority of the votes yesterday. And 70 Virginia National Guard soldiers are going to be deploying to Poland. The 529th Combat Sustainment Support Brigade left for Fort Cavazos, Texas, where soldiers will undergo mobilization training for about a month before they head to Poland. So another sign that we're beefing up Eastern Europe in preparation for a war with Russia. And Russian forces shelled northern Ukraine 267 times on Sunday. They shelled the Sumy Oblast. Okay, in one day, 267 times. And farmers in France have announced the start of a blockade of Paris. The Minister of the Interior of France requested the deployment of a significant number of defensive forces to prevent any blockage of airports and prohibit any entry by French farmers into Paris. Minister of Interior Darmanin announced that 15,000 police officers will be mobilized today to limit the effects of the siege of Paris by angry farmers. The Minister of the Interior has set 3 red lines: no blocking of the Rungis market, no tractors in inner Paris, and no airport blocking. Okay, so likely those red lines are going to be crossed. And if anything happens, I will update you guys on that. And apparently, North Korea has once again warned that the US and South Korea will become targets for North Korea if the quote unquote fuse of war is lit. And North Korean leader Kim Jong un personally oversaw the launch of the newly developed submarine launched strategic cruise missile Pool Hwasal 331 from a submarine on January 28th. So they tested a strategic submarine launched cruise missile yesterday, and Kim Jong un was personally there to oversee the launch. And the Chinese Navy has permanently stationed 4 warships around Taiwan. And China ordered a Japanese fishing boat to leave waters near Japanese held Senkaku Islands claimed by China. So China bullying Japan, telling them to leave waters that they believe are theirs, but are actually internationally claimed by Japan, internationally recognized by Japan. And the Financial Times is reporting that there are leaked documents revealing that the EU is considering cutting off funding to Hungary over a Ukraine aid veto. The European Union will urge its member states to shut off all EU funding to Budapest if Hungary does not back down on its pledge to veto the EU's proposed 55 billion euro aid package for Ukraine, a leaked document prepared by EU officials and seen by the Financial Times revealed yesterday. So lots of breaking news, guys. I want to just share some flight paths with you. What you're looking at here is a massive amount of NATO reconnaissance activity in Poland and the Baltic countries. You can see here a U.S. RC-135 rivet joint that flew around Kaliningrad and along the border of Russia and Belarus in the Baltic countries. We also had a French reconnaissance plane fly back and forth along the Russian and Belarus border here and along the Kaliningrad, Lithuania border. And then we also had this Swedish reconnaissance plane patrolling Poland's borders with Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine. So this is a red flag, guys. This much reconnaissance is very unusual. Okay, so something is going to go down here in the Baltics. Like I said last night in my stream, I think that Russia is preparing to launch a surprise ATTACK on the Baltic countries and possibly Poland. Okay, and I think it could happen this year before Trump gets in office, because it's looking more and more likely that Trump is going to beat Biden. And for Putin, Trump is an unknown. Okay, right now they know how Biden responds to things. He shows weakness. But if Trump gets in office, it's more of an unknown about how Trump is going to handle various situations. So Putin may decide that now's the time to go into the Baltics and call NATO's bluff. Okay, Biden said that they would protect every inch of NATO territory. Well, maybe Putin wants to put that to the test and see how NATO responds, see how quickly NATO can bring their forces up into the Baltics, see if it causes NATO to shatter. Okay. And we also had this U.S. Navy sub Hunter plane patrolling the Eastern Mediterranean. And what's interesting is it was patrolling near Lebanon and Syria. And then it also went up into Romania. And then we also had this U.S. Marine Corps VIP plane that took off from Greece and went to the Red Sea area. And then it turned its transponder off. So very interesting. And then here we have a U.S. Army VIP plane that went from Germany to Kosovo. Okay, very interesting. And we had this RC 135 operated by the U.S. patrolling the North Korea, South Korea border. Okay, the DMZ, flying back and forth. That's another reconnaissance plane. We had a French Air Force plane depart from Beirut late last night, which is really interesting. I don't know if they were evacuating diplomats or what, but a lot of these European countries have been evacuating people from Lebanon for a while now in anticipation of some kind of Israeli war with Lebanon. And we had a Chinese Air Force plane land in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia last night. And I want to just share some video footage here coming from France. You can see the French police here with armored vehicles getting ready to confront angry farmers. Okay, so this is going to be interesting because they're going to be blockading Paris this whole week. They're going to shut down all major highways that go in and out of Paris. So that's a big deal. Okay, this could turn into a massive situation there in France. Here's a picture of the U.S. ship that was hit by the Houthi missiles. This is just a file photo. This is not a recent photo, just so you can see what it looks like. It's some kind of a expeditionary ship, okay? And here's a new propaganda photo that was released by North Korea showing missiles hitting the U.S., okay? So very concerning there. And we also had a moderate radio blackout last night. An M6.7 class solar flare erupted, and there was a radio disturbance yesterday. Okay, moderate radio blackout. So we're still at the solar maximum now, so we could see more of these types of flares, and they could have a very serious effect on our power grid. Just a few weeks ago, we had the strongest solar flare since 2017. Luckily, it wasn't Earth facing, but if it was Earth facing, we would have had potentially power failures. Okay, the power grid could have been affected. So make sure you have your solar generators. Make sure you have plenty of batteries, flashlights, okay, in case the power does go out from a solar flare, and also if there's a nuclear war with everything going on. But that's the latest breaking news that I have. I will be back later on tonight with more breaking news. I'll probably go live again and do the overnight live coverage, because I do think that this massive retaliation on Iran is imminent, and it's also historic, so I will be covering it. So make sure you're subscribed, hit the notification bell down below so you get notified when I post these emergency alerts. And until next time, take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps: prepare, practice, and persevere.